Section 1. The Question and the Clock. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the world's two largest powers went to war? It feels distant, almost like science fiction, yet history is filled with conflicts that began unexpectedly, spiraling out of control before anyone could stop them. This essay won't make loud predictions but will follow a quiet, hour-by-hour timeline. We ask a simple, profound question. In a war between the United States and China, who truly loses? By walking through the initial hours, we see how quickly costs mount, not just for soldiers, for ordinary people, for bustling cities, and for the global economy. A tension timeline helps us see the cascading effects. It moves beyond headlines and rhetoric to real-world consequences. We'll show immediate military actions and the impact on civilian life. Section 2. Hour 0. The spark in the silence. The first hour is not a symphony of explosions, but a cacophony of confusion. It begins with a single event. Unmanned naval drone mistaken for a threat and destroyed. Severe cyber attack cripples the power grid of a major financial hub. Collision at sea or a misunderstanding between two patrols in a contested waterway. The cause is almost irrelevant. The reaction is everything. Washington. Phones ring in the dead of night. Beijing. Phones ring in the dead of night. Top officials convene in secure rooms. Faces illuminated by the glow of screens with fragmented, alarming reports. The first moves are made in a fog of uncertainty. Militarily, this is the hour of high alert. Satellites retasked to focus on specific regions. Section 3. Hour 1. The first exchange. For days the world has held its breath, caught in a tense standoff of posturing and threats. Now, 1 hour into the declared crisis, the fragile ambiguity shatters. The period of uncertainty is over. The conflict has begun. The first deliberate strikes are launched, not as a chaotic barrage, but as a calculated multi-domain assault. These initial salvos are carefully calibrated. They target military capabilities, not population centers. The strategy is surgical. To dismantle the opponent's ability to fight before the battle is truly joined. A volley of long-range anti-ship missiles targets a naval fleet detected far from the safety of port. Simultaneously, another strike hits a critical early warning radar installation, a decapitating blow attempting to blind the opponent and create corridors for follow-on attacks. In parallel with these kinetic strikes, cyber warfare escalates dramatically. This is not random hacking, but a synchronized digital offensive. Coordinated attacks shut down primary military communication networks, severing the link between commanders and their forces in the field. Malicious code sows disinformation, creating phantom threats on tactical displays to confuse enemy commanders and delay their response. And high above, jamming and spoofing attacks disrupt satellite guidance systems, aiming to make precision weapons lose their way. The goal is clear: land the first significant blow, cripple their ability to see, hear, and strike back effectively. The war has moved from a potential crisis to a violent multi-front reality. But the defender is not idle. Anti-missile defenses light up the sky. Aegis systems on U.S. destroyers, guided by networked sensor data, launch interceptors to protect the fleet. On land, HQ-9 batteries in China fire to intercept incoming cruise missiles, creating a dome of defensive fire over critical assets. In fortified bunkers, command and control centers, reeling from the cyber onslaught, switch to hardened, redundant systems, fighting to regain situational awareness. But some attacks find their mark. The first casualties are reported. A guided missile destroyer is heavily damaged, its combat capability uncertain. A key radar dome is destroyed, punching a hole in the defensive screen. And a patrol aircraft, its sensors jammed, is downed. The first hour ends not with a decisive victory, but with a bloody exchange that proves both sides can draw blood, setting the stage for a long and brutal conflict. The ripples spread, not in gentle waves, but as violent, unpredictable currents. What began as a calculated, limited engagement is now spiraling out of control. 3 hours into the conflict, the fighting widens far beyond the initial targets. The war is no longer a series of isolated strikes, but a rapidly expanding front. The strategic logic shifts from surgical precision to overwhelming attrition. Long-range missiles are now programmed for secondary targets, airfields, naval ports, and critical logistical hubs. The goal is to sever the enemy's arteries, to cripple their ability to sustain a fight. In parallel, electronic warfare becomes pervasive, creating a digital fog that blankets the region. This isn't just noise, it's a calculated assault on the nervous system of a modern military. Jamming blocks GPS, disrupting not only drone controls but also civilian navigation. It severs encrypted links between commanders and frontline units, leaving soldiers isolated and blind. The military campaign becomes a complex, multi-domain battle. Fighter jets and stealth bombers embark on long, perilous missions, evading enemy radar to strike heavily defended infrastructure deep within enemy territory. At sea, task forces clash over vital sea lanes. Destroyers and frigates exchange fire in brutal, high-stakes duels where algorithms and reaction times are measured in milliseconds. Below decks, a single mistake, a misread sensor, a delayed command, could doom an entire crew. 6 hours in, the reality of the conflict sends a shockwave across the entire planet. The news is the leading story everywhere, from London to Johannesburg, drowning out all other concerns. The Security Council calls an emergency session, but it is immediately paralyzed by vetoes and entrenched positions. The world's highest diplomatic body is reduced to a theater of accusation. Behind closed doors, leaders debate a unified response, but alliances are fracturing under the immense pressure. Global trade, diplomacy, and travel begin to tear apart in hours. Airspace is closed. Insurance premiums for shipping skyrocket, effectively halting maritime commerce in entire regions. Warships move to control vital ports and straits, turning global sea lanes into geopolitical pressure points. By the 24-hour mark, the human cost becomes undeniable. A refugee crisis explodes as civilians flee the expanding combat zones, creating miles-long convoys on jammed highways. Hospitals, already strained, are overwhelmed with casualties, their supplies dwindling as supply chains break down. At 36 hours, the first fragile attempts at de-escalation begin. Secret back-channel talks open between intermediaries, exploring the possibility of a ceasefire. But on the battlefield, the momentum of war is a powerful force, difficult to halt. Every hour the fighting continues, the path back to peace becomes steeper and more distant. By the 12-hour mark, the initial shockwave of strategic losses of ships, aircraft, and infrastructure begins to recede. It is overshadowed by a far more grim and intimate accounting, the rapidly growing human toll. The abstract calculus of war gives way to the concrete reality of individual lives shattered. Hospitals near the conflict zones are pushed beyond their breaking points. Corridors become makeshift wards, and the supply of blood, plasma, and basic medical equipment dwindles at an alarming rate. Medical teams working for hours without rest face an unrelenting tide of trauma. They struggle to treat not only wounded soldiers but a devastating number of civilians, men, women, and children caught in the crossfire, or hit by stray secondary blasts. Emergency services are stretched to their absolute limits, navigating debris-strewn streets and facing the constant threat of further attacks. The civilian exodus accelerates. Roads, rails, and buses are overwhelmed by a desperate tide of humanity. Coastal areas see streams of refugees fleeing to the nearest shore, hoping for passage on any vessel that will take them. Shelters open in schools and community centers, but they fill beyond capacity almost instantly. International aid begins to mobilize, but establishing safe humanitarian corridors proves difficult. Convoys face restrictions, danger, and the political complexities of a rapidly escalating war. In the shadows, the conflict deepens. Full-scale mobilization accelerates. Special operations forces deploy behind enemy lines, while sabotage and intelligence-gathering missions intensify the unseen war. Casualties, on both sides, rise steadily. One full day later, the world is a fundamentally different place. The initial hope for a swift resolution has evaporated, replaced by the grim acceptance of a prolonged, devastating conflict. Behind the scenes, frantic diplomatic efforts are underway. Back-channel talks explore the possibility of a ceasefire, but trust has been shattered, and demands from both sides are seen as untenable. The systems that underpin modern life are broken in critical places. Power grids fail, plunging cities into darkness. Communication networks become unreliable. Global economies reel. Stock markets are suspended to prevent total collapse, and the ripple effects of disrupted supply chains slam nations thousands of miles away from the fighting. A new, unstable, and unpredictable reality has set in. The conflict settles into a brutal war of attrition, a grinding contest of will and resources where each passing hour is measured in lost lives and squandered futures. In the days that follow, shock gives way to a grinding war of attrition with widening consequences. Human and economic costs compound relentlessly, factories shut down, laying off thousands without chips and parts, insurers teeter amid lost cargo, disrupted business, damaged property. Markets strain toward a wider financial crisis. Combat cycles through strikes and tense pauses. Drones become ubiquitous. Cyber attacks grow sophisticated, targeting infrastructure and morale. The long game is logistics and industrial capacity. Shortages become chronic, fuel rationing spreads, refugees number in the millions. Neutrality grows perilous, alliances strain, institutions fade into irrelevance. So, who loses in a war between the United States and China? The hour-by-hour breakdown is clear. Everyone. There are no short-term winners. The first to lose are soldiers and sailors. Civilians near the conflict suffer. Homes, safety, loved ones, global business stalls, workers lose jobs. Families, savings, vanish. The global economy likely shrinks. Unemployment and poverty rise. Import-dependent nations face crises. The vulnerable suffer most. Long-term costs, shattered trust, lost exchanges, environmental scars. The idea of a winner is a dangerous illusion. Any gain is drowned by economic devastation, isolation, and suffering. The lesson is urgent: build communication, set clear rules, and prioritize diplomacy. To step back from the brink.